Captain Slog, Stardate 20 or whatever, who cares. These are the continued voyages.
The Stardates are only going to get harder because the thing is, some two-parters we're going to do as one episode and some we're going to do as separate episodes. So if you're listening to this and you're like, Eddie, it's not that difficult to get Stardates down. Literally just go on Netflix and look at the number of the episode. That's the Stardate, and then just -1. Well, do you know what? It's going to get so much harder from here on out, and this man has just had a fucking brain gamma, right? So leave him alone. I see all your comments. I know all the comments that I want to make, right? And I don't. I hold it back because I'm like, yeah, all right, maybe a man with a fully functioning mind should theoretically be able to count to 23, but who am I to call him out on it?
I've got to say, like, this week is one of the most disappointing weeks for me since we started doing this, because in my head, I naturally assumed, Mark, following modern TV guidelines, that there were 22 episodes of this season. And it's only when I've gotten to this one that I've looked ahead and seen that there are, in fact... Why is season 1 of all seasons of Star Trek The Next Generation the one that's got 25 episodes, including the first one being a two-parter? That's 26 episodes of what is objectively the worst episode, the worst season of Star Trek.
I guess they just had 26 episodes left over from Star Trek Phase 2 that they were like, well, we've paid people to write these, we might as well use them.
And more importantly, Mark, if I was going to end like my season 1 of my new Star Trek show in a dramatic fashion, and I also needed to kill off one of the bridge crew, I'd probably do those two things in the same episode.
Yeah. Well, I disagree. For reasons that will become apparent as we get chatting about this nonsense. But how are you? How you did?
I've been alright. Like I said before, I watched all of Is It Cake, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I don't know if that's because it's a good show or because I've had stuff done to my brain. But I enjoyed that, and I almost got 2 extra dogs the other day. So because we came out of our house to walk the dog, and there were just 2 dogs in the street, which I don't know where you're listening to this from, but that isn't something that happens in the UK. We got rid of, like, stray dogs don't really exist because everyone has to microchip them now and stuff like that. So we just come out. Yeah.
Like, people are always like, oh, do you remember back in the 90s when dog shit used to be white? And I'm like, remember back in the 90s when there used to just be dogs in the street and no one knew who they were?
Yeah. So that I come out.
It feels like one was I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm glad that we have solved both of those problems. I'm glad that dogs are now getting the calcium that they require. But yeah, it's odd that one of them is like a distinct memory and pop culture touchstone for people, and no one remembers that there used to just be random dogs like just running around. No, they weren't common.
No, but it was a thing.
Like,
you could occasionally just see a dog and be like, "There's no one with that." Well, we step out, and there's a guy on the opposite side of the street, and there's 2 dogs. And then the guy like walks off, and I assume the dogs are his. I'm going to follow him, and then they just didn't.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Are these your dogs?" And he was like, "No." So we ended up having to like corral 2 dogs. At that point, like, we're not walking our dog anymore. Our dog has to go back in the house. So we corralled these 2 dogs inside, and I'm like, okay, cool, like Battersea, whatever. Call a vet. We'll get them like scanned to see who they belong to, microchip wise. But what I was fully aware of is if these are 2 stray dogs, given the look on my girlfriend's face, what was going to happen is I'd end up owning 3 dogs.
What types of dogs were they?
They were collies, so like big, like bigger than our dog, black and white. One had pointy ears, one had floppy ears. But fortunately, after apparently like getting through to Batsy Dog's home, you ring them up and there's just like an answer machine going like, "Please leave us a message." It's like, but I've got...
It's because dogs don't know how to answer the phone.
That might explain why it's so difficult to get a dog from Battersea Dog's home. The dogs don't want to leave. They're running it like their own dog hotel.
It's also really awkward because they can't really work the latch on a door either. So when the last person who left it, like when Paul O'Grady done his last documentary in there, And then he left in like 2017. He went, well, guys, it's been nice. See you later. And then he closed it and the latch shut behind him, and that's it. He's been fucked ever since. There's just dogs and cats running around.
Reason.
Well, there's not that many cats anymore. The dogs have eaten them for sustenance. Because here's the thing, right? Like, everybody always says you should get a dog rather than a cat. Because if you die in your own home, a cat will eat you, but a dog won't, which is A, untrue. A dog will, in fact, eat you faster than a cat. And B, it doesn't really matter, does it? Because you're dead. But if you were if you were to leave dogs and cats in a charity for 5 years, the dogs are going to take over. Do you know what I mean? People think of dogs as these amazing, loyal creatures, when really, I mean, as soon as there's a situation where there's no one else in charge of them, they will become a fascist dictatorship. Cats don't have that.
No, I disagree with you. My dog is definitely fully socialist. My dog doesn't believe in the concept of private property. No. Ownership is theft. And I know that because my dog treats every item in the house as if they are just hers. Yeah. Including all of the cat's toys. The cat has now got one toy left and a cardboard box the cat likes, and the dog is slowly trying to destroy both of those things as well.
Well, it's like Jeremy Corbyn's 2015 election slogan: "If you piss on it, it's yours."
It's the closest we came to getting rid of the Tories as well. So
the problem was they pissed on more. Because they had a lot of piss left over that hadn't been spent at Margaret Thatcher's grave.
Somebody the Tory wants to get a Margaret Thatcher Day in, and it's weird that the entire nation would be expected to queue up to piss on a grave on the same day.
What I would do as like a form of protest is I would just try and skip through the entire day by just putting on a blindfold and like earmuffs and just like pretending to not exist. That'll fucking show them.
But it can't be publicly owned. It's got to be privatised. Whoever thinks they can make the most money off, they're allowed a body. They can have everything.
Hold on a minute.
You think you can make money dancing Margaret Thatcher's corpse through the streets of London like some grim marionette, let's let the market decide.
So what you're saying is that Margaret Thatcher Day should be something like a version of The Purge, where all government regulations for 12 hours are rendered null and void?
Yeah, I reckon that the Tories are short-sighted enough that Dominic Raab particularly wouldn't realise he needed to pay off the police for 24 hours.
Yeah.
Whereas I'll slip him a Twix. Get in. Have
you ever seen the... How up are you on the Purge franchise?
Let's see. Weirdly, I've not seen Purge 1. I've seen Purge 2 because I got told that was the good one because it had Frank Grillo in it.
Yeah.
Basically just being the Punisher during the Purge, and I was like, yeah, okay, I'm up for that.
Yep.
That's it. That's all I've seen.
I've seen not only every film, but every episode of the 2 seasons of a television show that they released. And one of the plot points in the first Purge is that they instigate the Purge, right? And there's a character in it who looks like she's played by Marissa Tomei, and it's not Marissa Tomei, and it's all that I could think about while I was watching that film, because I mean that's not a surprise. 99% of the entertainment that I consume is just to distract me from thinking about Marissa Tomei. But one of the plot points is that they start doing the Purge in like this one county in New Jersey, or maybe it's the whole of New Jersey, I can't really remember. But they say all crime will be legal for 12 hours. But then it kicks in and it's like 2 hours into the Purge and they're like, these people are just dealing drugs and having parties. So they have to send in mercenaries to start shooting people, because at the end of the day it's just to get rid of the poor, right? If Britain instigated a Purge, I think they would have almost the same problem, but I think the one thing that the Tories would be disappointed about is just the overwhelming number of people who park on a double yellow line.
Oh no, screw that! I'm parking at the mother-child spots at Tesco's. Take that, this system.
I'm gonna park. Do you know, like at a crossing? I'm gonna park just like in between the two bits of fences so that no one can get through.
I mean, the thing is, I do live walking distance from Westminster,
What are you
so
gonna do?
I will at first be like, oh, I can park wherever I want, but then I will go murder a Tory. I'm not going to aim for like a top level one. You won't get anywhere near them. But like nobody on the first day of the purge, nobody's going after Rob, right? He's useless and ineffective. You won't even remember he exists until like the purge is over. It's like, oh, we didn't get Rob. I'm going for Rob. He's mine. I've earmarked him.
Do it. No, don't do it. I don't support this in any way if it goes to
You
court.
could lock that man in a wardrobe and he'd get outwitted by the wardrobe and die. So it's.
You'd be really confused about the lion and the witch inside.
Anyway, to bring this back round, we found the person who owned the dogs and gave them back.
Good. I forgot about the dogs. I'm glad to hear it. I hope the conclusion to that story was going to be there was a sheep herding competition that was happening in Yorkshire that just these two dogs they really lost.
They left in protest after somebody let a pig join. Absolute scenes. But have you
ever seen the deleted scene from Babe where there's two collies going through the rule book and one of them saying to the other, I mean, there's nothing in here that specifically says a pig can't compete. And then the other dog's like, yeah, I know. And you know what? We did fight hard for the civil rights of being able to play basketball. So if we take this right away from another species, you know, who are we? That makes us the bad guys.
I'm fully accepting that the Babe movies and the Air Bud franchise take place in the same universe. So
I also hope that they take place in the same universe as the Eddie Murphy Dr. Doolittle films. So that all the animals in the world can all speak to each other, but there's just one guy that can hear what they're saying. And he has to relay the information. Like when they go to he has to be their guy, their representative at the United Nations. And he's like, but I'm just a vet. Or whatever. Was he a vet? I can't really.
I think he was just a vet. That was his doc. That was where he got. But also that brings up the question: what? Because I've not watched the Eddie Murphy. When did he realise he could talk to animals? Because he must have been around them quite a lot.
Right. So I've just remembered the entire. So I've just taken a little shot on my personal relaxation light there, right? And I've just remembered the entire plot of the original Dr. Doolittle Eddie Murphy film. In the beginning, it's when he's a wee boy in like the 70s, and he's talking to a dog, and the dog says, "We like to sniff each other's butts. That's how we say hello to each other." So he meets, I think it's like a schoolmate's parent or something, and he goes round and he sniffs their butt, and goes, "Oh, how you doing? Nice to meet you." After that, his parents scold him hard enough that he forgets he has the ability to speak to animals, and can just like what a fucking beating that must have been. Honestly, that that kid must have been beaten into an actual coma, and then you know the part of his brain that realizes that he can decipher animal speech must have been quite badly damaged, because he then spends about 20 years, becomes adult Eddie Murphy with all that entails, and then and it's not like, see, in a traditional movie structure, you would have him be like, I do, like, what is the job in the world that's most anti-animal? Is it president of a seal clubbing corporation or something? You'd have him do that, but no, they make him a vet. He's around animals all the time. How does he just forget this? Unless, as I posited earlier, his parents kicked the utter shit out of them for what is barely an embarrassment.
Yeah. Especially when it's like, why did you do that? A dog told me. Hold a minute. Back up.
Yeah.
This feels like it's a money-making... Like, we could make a lot of money off of you being able to talk to animals. Let's investigate that for at least 10 minutes.
I have warned Laura, right? Because I really like horror movies. Not all horror movies. I like very specific horror movies. I like Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
And movies that are basically like Ghostbusters but a bit scarier or a bit funnier, right? The spectrum of... and in a lot of those movies, one of the plot points is that like the kid will spot something happening, something weird, something strange in their neighbourhood, perhaps. And they'll be like, that don't look good. and they'll go and they'll tell their parents, to which the parents will say, "There's fuck up, shut up, get back to bed. There's nothing to be afraid of." I have warned Laura more than once that I will believe a child's supernatural experience. I think, in my opinion, very much faster than she will. And it's not.
Here's my rule.
The reason I'm saying it is to give her a warning, is to be like, you are going to come out the bad guy on this.
My personal rule on believing a child has psychic abilities is very simple. Most of the time, no.
Yeah.
No. However, Mark, if I, in the future, have written a book, and therefore am a writer, and decide to write my next book by taking some time alone in a small town in Maine, right? And there is an unexplained psychic child, I will believe that child is psychic immediately. If I learned anything from the Stephen King miniseries of the late 80s and early 90s, it's that child has real psychic abilities. Don't trust the priest, right?
Yeah, 100% agreed.
And it's fine that you've got a drinking problem. You're still going to be able to be the hero because Stephen King was working through a lot of his own issues.
Unless you are a character in which this is taking place in a hotel, in which case, yes, you might be like, well, isn't that the exact same story? Yeah, except you are the bad guy. But hey,
yeah,
at least you're not fucking kids. Speaking of bad,
would you say this episode is as bad as paedophilia? In fact, no, actually, following the logic of this episode itself, the bad guy in this episode must be at least a bit of a nonce. Right, the bad guy is literally an entire species brought all of their negative feelings, like everything bad about them, to the surface, and then they shed it off and left it in a puddle.
Yeah,
right?
they did a Ghostbusters too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that means that like all of the negative things of an entire species. So that means that there must be some nonce in there. Unless this was a species that didn't have nonces but still thought their own behaviour was bad enough that they needed to do the whole excrete through sweat thing. Something bad happened on that planet, right?
I mean, but then also, wouldn't it be the case that if it's because I think they do say that it's not specifically all like all objective evil. I guess it's subjective bad and negative.
Yeah.
Now, that obviously comes down to, again, subjectivity. So if there's a highly orthodox religious person who is like tamping down, what's the word I'm looking for here, like tamping down on their own, repressing their own latent homosexuality, then in their mind the negative that they're going to put in that creature is that it's just going to be an absolutely flaming gay man. And the problem is I don't think that's bad. I'm quite on record on this podcast as being pro-gay. Pro-gay, pro-IRA. That's the tagline. But
we combine the two into what we call the IR gay. If there was a planet where it was like that, they did believe homosexuality to be a sin, and they were trying to expel all of the homosexuality, wouldn't the creature just be Jonathan Van Ness from Queer Eye? Just deeply fabulous and incredibly positive, and just really helpful to the crew. Just tell Riker to grow a beard.
Yeah, the experiment wouldn't work if you'd done it on a subjective level, because basically there aren't that many things that most people agree on that are objectively evil. A lot of people just think a lot of things are bad that other people think are equally good. So if you got your entire species to project their negative qualities and thoughts into one single creature, it would just end up being a very centrist, like, moderately political person, but who does murder and molest children, I guess. Which yes, is evil, obviously, once again. But
It's like it wouldn't even be like
it would just be it would just be a regular, somewhat ugly person.
We thought it would be we thought it'd do all evil stuff, but it turns out like it would be like it really in favour of enslaving everyone. But it turns out one of the people we had involved in this experiment was the CEO of Nestle, and he says that slavery's all right.
Yeah, so exactly. That'd be the problem. And even then, murder wouldn't work because there would be enough people who don't necessarily glorify murder, but think enough that murder is fine and even good in the case of, you know, like people that they think deserve the death penalty. Yeah. This is a. I mean, this isn't the reason this is a bullshit episode. The reason this is a bullshit episode is it goes much further than the philosophical debates about. This conversation so far has a better structure.
Yeah, it's the plot of this episode. Just to sum it up as simply as possible, is an oil monster kills Tasha Yar.
Yeah,
that's it.
A 10-minute segment stretched into 45 minutes, and the monster's motivation
is he wanted to,
is he felt like it, but also sometimes he's sad. So it's a bit. Imagine Avengers Endgame if 20 minutes into Avengers Endgame, Thanos went, actually, see that thing about destroying half the universe? I won't do that. And then Captain America goes, well, thanks. And then Thanos went, on second thought, no, maybe I will.
And then at the end of the episode, he basically decides not to. At the end of the movie, he decides not to do everything, leaving there only one person dead, and Peter Quill really sad.
Yeah. So the episode starts with they're going to pick up Councillor Troy,
who is at a conference,
and I quote, at a conference. Which, what kind of conference? Is it a Beta Z Councillor conference? In which case, is it just a bunch of people sitting in a theatre while there's one person on stage who says, I hope you're all ready for a good time, and then every single person in the audience turns to the other person next to them and goes, I think he's hiding something.
I want to do a big shout out for a big moment of bravery in this episode as well, because Troy is coming back by shuttle with an unnamed crewman, and I just think that crewman really needs to thank Denise Crosby for choosing to quit Star Trek The Next Generation, because otherwise he would have been murdered so hard.
So that's what I was going to bring up in response to something that you said earlier. I actually think, and I've read a few people that have said similar, that it's entirely appropriate that Tasha Yar goes out 6 minutes into an episode with absolutely no fanfare. She just gets instantly taken out by some tar monster, because that's what happens to security people on the Enterprise. She's basically a red shirt.
See, that's the interesting point, Mark, because it occurred to me watching this, so I actually went and did look this up. This is only the third confirmed death we've had on board this Enterprise, which just seems to highlight that either health and safety has massively improved in the century or so since the original Enterprise, or just Picard cares about his crew significantly more than Kirk did.
Right, we
lost Singh. Ramos was killed by one of the Klingons.
Yep, that's right.
And then Tasha Yar.
Oh.
So you've got bear in mind that the crew is significantly larger than the bridge officers.
Yeah,
you're more likely to die on board this Enterprise if you're a named member of the bridge crew than if you're a faceless red shirt.
It's the same thing that being the president of the United States is, I think, in like the top 25 deadliest jobs you can have in the US, because so many of them have been assassinated, and yet there's only been 46 of them.
Yeah.
No, I. So obviously, this happened because Denise Crosby wanted out.
Yeah. And having watched all of season, a lot of people make fun of Denise Crosby for wanting to leave, leaving Star Trek at the worst possible moment. But having watched season 1 in its entirety, no. Yeah, if this is what you think the show's going to be, I get it.
Yeah, big time.
And yeah, she didn't like the fact that she was basically like a hura, like she was just there to be there as some sort of window dressing and have it like the occasional line. And obviously in later years, Nichelle Nichols did a lot more with the role, but it required her hanging around for, in her case, about 30 fucking years.
Yeah. Yeah. And she does get little moments. She gets a really nice little moment in this episode where Worf they're just on the bridge and they're talking about the martial arts competition.
Yeah, that's very specifically the martial arts competition, where they're all going to do the martial art.
Yeah.
Not a specific one. It's not judo. It's not Krav Maga. It's just that one martial art they have in the future.
Yeah.
Did all martial arts...
But
martial arts get destroyed in the post-atomic horror, and all that's left is that thing where Kirk hits you on the back with both fists.
To be fair, I know that obviously they cost a lot to learn, but martial arts are largely ineffectual against nukes. And I don't know if Steven Seagal knows this, but someone really should tell him, just in case it makes him want to get out of Russia.
If you've seen Under Siege, you'll know that martial arts are actually very effective against nukes.
So I really like that little moment, and I think for me it was something that, look, I've said several times, I have never really watched Star Trek Next Gen with any great conviction before. I've seen the odd episodes, and I've seen all the ones about the Borg, and I kind of watch it every now and again when it was on TV. This is my first concerted effort. This is the first time I have seen most of season 1, and so the little very human moments that you get in this season, I think a thing that's keeping me going is that I know that there's a lot more coming, and a lot better ones. You're right, like, Denise Crosby did leave at the worst possible time, because from here on out is kind of where we start it becoming much more of a character show.
Well, here's an interesting point that I feel, though, is I don't know if that would have happened if Denise Crosby hadn't left.
Right.
Because I feel the very first version of that you properly get is in this episode. It's not a good episode, but there is the bit where they have... at the end of the episode, they have Tasha Yar's funeral in on the holodeck in the default desktop from Windows XP,
and Beverly Crusher's blue suit they discovered cannot be chroma keyed against a blue sky. So there are 2 shots in the funeral where she is wearing a green uniform. Oh,
okay, right, that makes sense.
I mean, look. Obviously, this episode is all over the place. Shall we talk about the funeral?
Yeah, let's just talk about the funeral. Yeah. So it's a recorded message that Tasha Yar has, where she's semi-transparent, despite the fact that isn't at all necessary on the holodeck. She tells everybody on board, she says what she loves about them and why she's thankful for them. And because we're so early in Star Trek and the characterization and writing has been so bad in season 1, it feels like that a lot of this is drawn from absolutely fucking nowhere. And is then is what they decide to build the characters based on.
The first thing she says is the first people she really speaks to are Troy and Beverly, and I'm like, have you even spoken to them in this show?
Yeah. She also says that she compares Data to a child, which is fucking weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the whole thing about she talks to Picard, who's like, I don't know what it's like to have a father because I never had one, and so I don't know if you're like a father to me, but I know that I respect you and I love it. It's weird. But yeah, but it's like I say, it's like the first time you get these things, and then afterwards the writers were like, oh, we've actually for the first time had to put in writing what these characters are, other than their job title. So now that's what we're working from.
So do you think how high up do you have to get in Starfleet before you get to record a death message for the bridge crew?
I think I think anyone's allowed to record like a death message.
Right.
But there's only 2 holodecks, so if like 4 people die, that'd be a harsh way of finding out that you're like, you'd find out from the order they were loaded up on. Oh, apparently not like. I thought us down on deck 47. I thought we were quite popular, but apparently fourth out of everyone who died today is Steve.
Well, technically, it's the way that I would get around that, right, is I'd be like, well, technically it's an alphabetical order, but because there are other species that have different alphabets than we do, we also have to take that into account. And that is how I would get away with doing absolutely zero work if I was the guy who loaded the funerals into the hologram. I'd just be like, right, next one, and right, boof, right, there you go.
The other thing with this isn't it established Star Trek lore at this point? Like, they put the body in a tube and fire it out into space.
Yeah, I said to Laura, I was like, at this point, we have had at least one Starfleet funeral, and this is not how it works. And they have that body because they took it back to the Enterprise, and I wrote down, first of all, Dr. Crusher didn't put this much effort into saving Mr. Singh, and
that's true. She did not.
The one problem I have with that scene as well is that scene basically implies that death is a very curable condition in Starfleet if you can catch it early enough.
Yeah,
which
she dies.
Is nonsense.
She's announced dead on the planet.
Yeah,
and then they beam her back to the transporter room, and then they take her down a corridor to sickbay rather than beaming her directly to sickbay, which seems like it would be more logical and time-saving maneuver.
And then there's also that thing of doctors pronouncing time of death. It's this. That's obviously a very official thing. So her to sit down next to her and go, she's dead. Let's get her back on board. See if we can do anything about this. Like, nah, come on, Bev. This is a Navy operation. You maybe you should be careful about saying who's dead and who's not. You are after all the only doctor on this ship, as far as we're aware. And if you get fired for blatant admin misconduct, where's that going to leave us? Who are we going to put in charge then? Geordie?
No, I assume that there's only one doctor allowed on ship, which is why the second in command in sickbay is an incredibly elderly woman who apparently is just an ensign.
Yeah.
Even though that woman's whoever's the grey-haired woman in sickbay with Beverly and is still an ensign, either joined Starfleet late in life or has absolutely fuck all ambition.
What would you record?
What for my holographic death? Temptation is just to do to just recreate Tony Stark's from Endgame.
Yeah.
It's either that. Another good one would be, look, guys, thank God you found this recording. I'm worried it might be corrupted. Anyway, the treasure is buried at, and then just have it glitch out. Or I'll just say, time is but a doorway, death is but a window, I shall return.
You always get that quote wrong, which is very impressive. Death is but a door, time is but a window, I'll be back. Clean, mate. There's no meat on that line. What I would do, right, is because obviously I imagine the way that you record a hologram is that you probably do it in the holodeck. There's probably some kind of virtual camera that you can set, right? It'll be like a rendering program. And what I would do is I would say, thank you all for coming here today. I'm so glad that you could be gathered in my memory. Let me tell you some stories that I want you, and some things about me that I want you to remember me by. And then I would turn 180 degrees round to the back and start telling the story, so that they then would have to move around to get to the other side, right? And then I would do this every 10 to 15 seconds or so that they would have to so that they would either have to choose, right, to stop doing it and listen to some funeral stuff coming from the back of my head, or one of them would need to be like, I know this is his last message, but it's so fucking annoying, computer, can you just have him always facing the front? Like literally editing the last thing I ever wanted anyone to hear, because they were so pissed off with the format that I did it in.
What's just occurred to me is, like, you could edit in a jump scare.
Yeah.
Like, you could have like get somebody to come close and then like turn into the girl from The Ring.
See if Laura, on her phone, recorded me like a last message before she died, and she done it in portrait mode, I wouldn't watch it. Or what is this fucking TikTok? No.
You don't have your TikTok loaded up to, like, if I don't press a button every 24 hours, there's a bunch of TikToks that's just uploaded for after my death.
I've got some very damaging evidence about some people. Yeah, big time. So at the beginning of the episode, they get a distress call from Ben, Ensign Ben, who's flying Troy's shuttle. But they are refitting the dilithium crystal chamber in the warp drive, the warp engine. So they're on impulse power, and then they find out that Troy's in trouble. So Picard hails down to to engineering and says,
Wayland T. Lynch is our engineer for this episode.
Yeah, exactly. Our rotation of chief engineers. And he says, how long is it going to take to get the dilithium back in? 20 minutes. We don't have it. Okay, I'll do it by hand. It'll only take 3. So he whacks it in. No checks. By the way, this is the dilithium crystals that power and maintain the Manti antimatter field.
Yeah.
That's what makes warp drive happen. And all I wrote down was, is risking a giant antimatter explosion really worth saving Troy?
No, but Ben is really well liked by the crew.
Yeah. They actually went to his funeral first.
I would have been... one thing I did like about this episode is it's the first time we got to see dilithium crystals, and it's a really fancy term for what is obviously just quartz.
Yeah.
It's just rose quartz. It's like, that has apparently got the secret of warp technology locked inside it somewhere. Why is nobody researching rose quartz apart from hippies?
You know that way that there is, and I don't know where it came from. I don't know whether it came from the kind of new age hippie movement of putting vibes into crystals. But there's a lot of sci-fi TV shows, especially spacefaring sci-fi TV shows, where information is saved on quartz or on crystal, like it's like a kind of USB stick. So what if you could walk around a beach and just pick up a random quartz stone and put it into a computer, and then just terabytes upon terabytes of pornography?
Just everyone who's ever fucked on that beach has left there. Possible.
Because it's the only information worth saving, isn't it?
Yeah. That's all that's going to be left of the human race. Just porn floating through space and that copy of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy that's in the glove box of that Tesla. Okay, this episode gave me a question that I've not considered before, because they can go to warp 1.
Yeah.
Because it's not like up and running, but it's faster than fucking nothing. So they're doing a warp 1. As the Enterprise is going along, Mark, we've not addressed this. What are the white specks? The white specks that appear during warp, whizzing past, because they're not stars. Yeah, they're not stars, are they?
I mean,
the stars are massive and really far apart. Like, it takes them a while to get between the stars at warp. Those aren't stars.
I mean, do you want the boring answer?
Is it just so to make warp look cool?
Yeah, it's just to give you a sense of speed, and of being in space. Because what would probably happen with warp is that either everything would just be black because we'd be flying so fast that light wouldn't make it in the window in time, or everything would look like there'd be like a point here, and then everything would be warping around it and kind of looking inflated, and it would look like a giant anus. So your choices, Eddie, are nothing or anus. Which one do you take?
Well, whenever I'm given that choice, the answer is always anus. But it's like I choose to believe that there is some white powder, like what we don't know about in Star. But shortly before humans became space powder, there was the Great Talcum Powder War. It just left a fine white dust spread liberally across all of space.
It's just the cocaine that blows out of Gene Roddenberry's office.
No, that's it. That's it. When the Q collective sit around and decide to do some cocaine, they do it off the universe. They get the universe out, lay it down.
I guess you would, because it's black, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it makes it easier to see.
Yeah.
That's why they're able to appear inside the universe, because they want to make it look like a mirror, so it looks like the lines are a bit fatter.
Anytime you see Q turn up in an episode of TNG, he's just looking for a bit of coke that went missing. Just he happens across. He's like, "Oh fuck, Picard's here. Let's pretend I've got a reason." Robin Hood.
Exactly. By the way, is that why they do coke off mirrors? Why do you do that?
Yeah. Why do they?
Yeah.
Do that?
Why does that happen? I mean, surely that's what the cover of Independence Day is for. Like that's that DVD that I found in my flat. That I think was a Russian copy of Independence Day, so we were never going to watch it.
I do. If I have to do it off something, I'm going to do it off a particularly nice bit of vinyl that I've got. Not the album, like the cover. Usually off the Tron Legacies one.
That's
£75 for that special limited edition repressing, and more than that in shipping to get it from the United States of America. But fuck, it's good.
Yeah, I can imagine. So
should we talk a bit about the fucking killer, Armus?
Yeah,
the black goo creature. So, like we said, he's basically all of the evil of this race, and they sloughed him off and left him here. And he just kills them at random. But then also Troy psychoanalyzes him a bit, and it's like, if you bring rage to the surface, it's a thing. And he kills Tasha by zapping her, and then she's got a bit of blood on her face that looks exactly like Gorbachev's birthmark. And then he's like, and then he kidnaps Riker and tortures him.
Yeah.
We don't know.
He's keeping him alive because he drags him into the tar,
and he keeps him alive.
Yeah.
He's all I've got in my notes is this is such a shit alien.
Oh, it's the worst. First of all, the first time you see it, it looks like an Alex Mack style, like liquid slick, and there is no worry whatsoever in my mind that this show is being listened to by anyone young enough to not understand the reference to Alex Mack.
The Secret World of.
The Secret, Alex Mack, The Secret World of. I'm sure you remember it, James, but...
Where is the reboot of that, Mark? She's a girl whose superpowers are she can turn into a puddle. That's it. That's all she's got. She gets exposed to toxic waste? And weirdly, Jessica Alba's in it.
Oh yeah, she gets it. No, I do think, and I will fuck it. Look, I don't know how many times I need to say it. I will die on the hill of my own sense of knowledge about the lore of the Secret World of Alex Mack. I would bet some money on her also having the ability to conduct electricity, but maybe not necessarily to generate it. I think she can power things.
And I also distinctly know that there's an energy drink that she reacts to, and it gives her super strength instead.
Yeah, that's right.
But she can't be a puddle at those points, and I think she has orange skin. But I also remember that she immediately, with having super strength, is like, right, we're going to the junkyard. I'm going to see if I can lift it, if I can lift the cat up. Because the great thing is, she doesn't have to worry about the super strength wearing out while she's lifting a car. Because if it does, she can just turn into a puddle.
Yeah. Hold on, you vamp for a minute.
It was a weird show. Now I come to think about it, and it's one of many things I'd like to talk about more than Armos, the shit alien. But no, yeah, you're right.
Larissa Olenek.
Yeah.
What's she doing these days?
She's been in some stuff because I've Googled her in the past for reasons. I definitely didn't Google actress from Alex Mack, OnlyFans.
She's in... she's not in a lot. She's in Mad Men.
Yeah, she's one of those actors who is barely in anything, and then when she turns up, I go, ah! And then whoever I'm in the room with, who is, if they're under the age of 37, I then have to explain to them what the secret world of Alex Mack was and why I'm so impressed. And then have to also then admit that I only really half remember it, and I probably have only ever watched in total about 7 episodes.
Yeah, the only episode I remember is because there's a company. If I remember right, they say, and look, after we finish all of Star Trek, we'll do the Secret World of Alex Mack, right? But if I remember right,
before we do Discovery,
the company that makes the toxic waste is trying to cover up, like that this happened. But they then discover that, oh my god, a teenager got affected by this toxic waste and can turn into a big silver puddle. So they send out I think either a private investigator or like a member of the company to go and try and find her, and he finds her, he witnesses her doing this, but then lies to the company that it's Alex Mack because he fancies her mum or something.
Oh, yeah.
90s Nickelodeon was wild. There was a fucking Dracula live action series on 90s Nickelodeon, and I remember it being terrifying.
Yeah, no, kids' TV in the 90s. What if you're not familiar with this time period, what you need to understand is it was TV in the 90s was only 10 years divorced from the British when British kids' TV was entirely public service videos about how you would fucking die. It's like, oh, have you gone? It's like, do you live on a 1970s housing estate where we still haven't rebuilt from the stuff from the war? Bet there's an area where you go hang out and it's full of shopping trolleys and water. You're gonna drown. Literal. These are videos in which like death was a recurring character. If you want a giggle, Mark, I will, after we've recorded this, I will send you over a link for the video of the kid who loses both of his legs playing on because he's playing on the train tracks. And it ends with the police giving his mum back his football boots.
Yeah.
Because he'll need them now, won't he? And then he just sits, and then because it's the 70s, it's the kid is sat in a wheelchair alone in a room where he's just left, where he will never have a life because fuck being disabled in Britain in the 70s.
They'll just use him to bring in more PIP than he gets now. Imagine the cop had just handed her both of his legs with the football boots still on.
Better unlace these. Actually, just pull them out.
Armus. So they try to, again, this is a 10-minute segment of another episode that they've stretched into 45 minutes for some bizarre reason. But at one point, him and Riker try to have a philosophical debate. Riker says, "We want to see our injured comrade." Armus goes, "Why?" And Riker says, "Well, we think that all life is sacred." To which Armus again goes, "Why?" To which I was sitting there going, I mean, it's not a useful argument, but it is something that maybe Riker should ask himself. And then Riker says, "We believe that all life has a right to exist." To which Armus replies, "An interesting notion which I do not share," which ironically is word for word a conversation that I've had with someone in a pub in Hampshire. Who also appeared out of a sort of black gooey puddle in the ground outside. It was quite bizarre.
Interestingly enough, Mark, up until I think it was the 80s, the Conservative Party of the UK didn't actually have a process in place in which to elect a new leader. The official wording of their documentation was, "When the time is right, a new leader will emerge." And I can only assume that was a direct reference to Armus.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Fucking hell.
Yeah, but it's nice to see that the sort of things that the people of this planet do think were wrong, because you could tell from Armus's behaviour, if he does something, they thought it was bad and they got it out themselves. For example, he knocks Geordie's visor off.
Yeah.
So they were very staunchly against ableism. We can We could agree on that. But also did secretly want to knock a blind man's sight aid off. So seems like you're virtue signalling there.
Yeah, but you know how it goes, Eddie. Like, sometimes you walk by a primary school and the only thing that's going through your head is, I could punch every single one of them before one of them could get me.
Armus is bad at being evil as well, though. Because
Yeah.
he can move shit around like psychically. So he decides to like move Data's arm around and like get him to point the phaser at people and go, how does this make you feel? And Data's like, I don't actually have emotions, so
Yeah.
it's just like,
Well, how does it feel to be that you'll be the one that will be pulling the trigger on Dr. Crusher? Well,
like,
you'll be pulling the trigger.
Yeah, I don't have the associated guilt that would go with that. And then he makes it point it at himself, and he's like, "How does it feel to like face your own extinction?" And Data's response is just curious.
Yeah.
Intriguing to some extent, I guess.
Can't say I haven't wondered.
They should just get him a copy. If they just get Armus a copy of The Sims, just drown people and set people on fire. I do want to point out that in this episode, right? So Armus's big motivation, he's like, doesn't all the way through. He's like, I don't want anything. I just want to like mess with you. And then at the end, he's like, I actually would kind of like to leave this planet that I'm stuck on in infinite loneliness.
Yeah.
At which point you're kind of like, well, if you hadn't killed anyone and you just asked, they probably would have let you. Because like, you could have taken control of the Enterprise like a serious, sensible alien. But
there is Starfleet, I imagine, has a quotient, like an acceptable level of how big a dick you can be, and they'll still give you an escape from infinite, unending loneliness. Yeah. Like, I imagine the line is probably slightly underneath murdering a bridge crew member in cold blood for no reason. But still, I reckon there's like a steals people's lunches from the like break room. Like, it's above that. Like, I reckon you could go in and you know, start spouting off like alt-right slogans, and they'd still take you somewhere.
Yeah,
the
nicer planet.
One of the many Nazi planets that we have in the universe.
There's literally a Nazi Earth from Star Trek the original series. Yeah. Okay, just you can turn up there, drop him on their version of Hitler. Yeah. Have at it.
You could walk around, and every Starfleet member you see that's a male presenting person wearing one of the skirts, you could just answer everything that they say with, "I'm just asking questions, mate. I'm just asking questions." And that would probably still be acceptable enough to help you, again, escape the absolute unending torment of the void.
Well, yeah, because there's a serious question about this, which is, like, how long do you go to prison for murder in the Federation? Because there must be like a prison sentence, because we know that
they don't have capital punishment.
Well, no, Tom, like New Zealand is like a penal colony that like let's send Tom Paris to in Voyager. Well, at the beginning of Voyager, it's a thing. We're going to discuss this when Wesley joins the Academy. There's a really good episode, and there's a lot of stuff that we'll have to unpack at that point. But because at the end of this episode, Picard's like, right, okay, we're not. They all get off the planet, they leave, and then they also like set up a buoy, like to like let everyone know this planet's quarantined, never go here.
Yeah.
So Picard has individually decided to sentence Armus to eternal solitary confinement for failing to, like, for killing just one person. Which I'm not saying murder's okay. I am saying that seems long.
Yeah.
That's like Doctor Who Family of Blood levels of Jesus Christ, I fucked with the wrong person. Like, they don't even leave him like a fucking like a games console. Give him a Switch.
I was under the impression that they killed him.
No, they don't. I think like they have a discussion.
No, they fire a missile like the Enterprise. They fire like what looks like a photon torpedo.
But he eats phaser energy, so maybe that doesn't.
It just makes him more angry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably for the best that no one's going to go there.
The only other thing to talk about in this episode is that it's Worf gets promoted to acting security chief.
And he after Tasha Yar dies, we cut to the conference room, and Picard is saying, we have to put our feelings aside. We still have a mission. We have to save Troy and Ben to a lesser extent. And Worf is just sitting there completely silent and really sad because, well, as we found out earlier, he put all his money on Tasha in the martial arts tournament, and now I believe he used the words "sure thing."
And the important lesson you should learn from this is if you are going to place a sports bet, wait until just before the event occurs, just to make sure that the person that you're betting on has turned up.
Exactly. How many because back in the 1970s, gambling regulation was all over the place, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that the reason that policeman brought those shoes home to that mother is that he had put all of his money on that primary school in a local tournament and now had lost it? And I mean, I'm talking like the winter heating allowance. And now that stupid little fucking kid going and getting his legs chopped off has meant that my little Jenny won't eat. So here's his shoes. You're a terrible mother.
Also, does that mean that would actually? By the way, if you're a fan of gambling, you should be in favour of the socialist utopia of Star Trek, because when everybody's got universal basic income, free food, free accommodation, and can pursue their life, then that means that you don't need gambling regulations to make sure people don't end up homeless. You could literally take every penny somebody's got and not have to feel bad in the slightest.
Yeah.
So it's a golden future.
It's like capitalism, but for everyone.
Right. We've got 3 more bastard episodes of this season, Mark.
So I feel like we can close this out with when they are at the funeral. Data says, "Sir, the purpose of this gathering confuses me, and you're not alone, Data."
The purpose and format of everything that's happened in season 1 of Star Trek confuses me, Data.
And the worst thing is, from what I understand, although we do get some all-time greats in season 2, we also get some all-time lows.
Yeah. And to be fair, I just want to make this absolutely clear to anybody listening. This isn't just bitterness from me and Mark that we weren't invited to the funeral. Although, right, I'd also bet on Tasha. She's the only one who knows the martial art.
Yep.
There's Steve was wanking on about something called judo. Never heard of it.
Jensen was the guy who put together the little platform that our hologram came out of.
Yeah. But fortunately for us, Mark, this does open up the possibility of advancement for ourselves. There's some dead man shoes we can move up.
I'll take an amputee's shoes. They don't necessarily have to die.
I'll have them delivered to you by a 1970s police officer.
So I like my Amazon packages delivered.
Anyway, thank you very much for listening.
Well, thank you. Bye.